So some of you might be saying, yes, we know that aerobic exercise reduces your fat. All we're saying, we intermittent fasting proponents, all we're saying is, in addition to the exercise, which we know reduces fat, also fasting reduces fat. Why? Because hi, welcome back to Love, Laugh, and Lose Weight. I'm Leanne, your host. This week we're going to talk about the FAD, I'm sorry to call it that, but the FAD of intermittent fasting. And I want to call it a fad just because I want to get some irate people writing in and saying, this is not a fad, it's a lifestyle choice. Yes, write in and tell me that. But I want to talk about it because actually I've learned some things. I've done some research in preparation for this week, in addition to things that I thought I always knew, things that I've known for 30 years, and maybe many of you have heard. I was going to bring that in, but I did some very recent research, looked up some academic papers of studies looking at intermittent fasting. And by the way, it's not all in my court. It's not all saying intermittent fasting is unhealthy. No, it's not saying that. So I had some surprising findings. It's not 100% in the court of the pro-intermittent fasting people either. It's somewhere in the middle. So stay tuned and you'll see. Guess what? Now I don't have to go mole walking. I'm out here shoveling this damn snow. See? Shovel. Getting my steps in, getting my workout. It's great. Now, guess what? Now, guess what? When it snows, I don't say, oh, damn, oh my God, it snowed again. I say, yay, today I don't have to go mole walking. Okay, so what was the point of that? Okay, the point of that was the best way, in my mind, and this hasn't changed, the best way to lose fat, if you want to lose fat, the best way is aerobic exercise. That has not changed since the days of Covert Bailey, which some of you probably have heard, know and remember. Covert Bailey 30 years ago talked about fit or fat and aerobic exercise to lose fat. That hasn't changed. Get out there, shovel your snow, mow your grass, do your walking, do mall walking if you have to. That's what I've been doing lately, mall walking. It's a little bit boring, but it is so darn cold outside. Mall walking, cross-country skiing, aerobic exercise is the way to get rid of fat. So some of you might be saying, yes, we know that aerobic exercise reduces your fat. All we're saying, we intermittent fasting proponents, all we're saying is, in addition to the exercise, which we know reduces fat, also fasting reduces fat. Why? Because that fasting means that we are relying on fat as a stored source of energy. So instead of burning sugars or burning the immediate carbohydrates that we're eating, which by the way turn to fat if we don't burn them, but I'm sure a lot of you know that already. But instead of burning those fast energy producers, we're relying on our stored fat as a way of using our energy. And we do this when we're fasting because we've used up all of our sugars. We've used them up until we eat again. We don't have anything left but the fat to burn. That's all great and dandy. I watched a video that Kimberly suggested that I watch. It was a TEDx Talks one. I watched that. It was good. The guy looked a little bit gaunt and unhealthy, but I watched it. I also watched a couple of videos by Dr. Eric Berg that was suggested by a writer, somebody that wrote in from Walking for Life. Her name is Laura. Laura wrote this in. Thanks a lot to Laura. Thanks to Kimberly for these suggested videos. I did watch them. Dr. Eric Berg, I really like. I'm going to put a link to one specific video that Laura suggested. I'm going to put it underneath this thing, my video right now, because it actually supports what a lot of you are saying about intermittent fasting. It's good. But the thing that I have about these is I wanted some science to back up whether intermittent fasting was healthy. Why? Because Covert Bailey, who I've always loved, has always said, I have a quote. I'm going to go find this quote. Hold on a second. A quote from his book is, crash dieting over-exercising and fasting will slow down your metabolism. Now, some of you might say, yes, but we're not fasting long enough to slow down the metabolism. That's the great thing. We're burning fat, but we're not fasting long enough. Okay, I hear you. But we always have heard that our bodies are amazing, amazing machines. When we dramatically reduce our calorie intake, which I realize intermittent fasting doesn't do over the long run, you are getting your calories. Well, you're reducing it a little bit. That's how you lose weight, but you are getting your calories. You're not dramatically reducing over the long run, but nonetheless, we keep putting ourselves into this, what I'm going to call starvation mode. I know some of you will write in, this is not starvation. Please write in. I love controversy. But when we put ourselves into this starvation mode, what people like Covert Bailey and others historically have said is our bodies adapt. How do our bodies adapt? By storing the fat and not letting go, or just letting it. It's very difficult to let go of that fat. So in the short run, yes, we will lose weight because we're using up the fat. But in the long run, it'll become harder and harder to lose weight. Why? Because our bodies have adapted to being sort of put in these starvation modes all the time. I'm in a starvation, oh, now I can eat. I'm starving again, now I can eat again. So because of that, our bodies get used to, I don't know when I'm going to not be able to eat. I don't know when I'm going to be in famine mode again, so I better conserve my energy. That's how the metabolism slows down. This is what I was thinking. You'll be happy to know I've done some research to prepare for this because I wanted to prove my case. I didn't completely prove my case at all, not yours either, but let me just show you some papers that I came across. Okay. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention is that sleep is really important for keeping our metabolic rate up as well, because when we don't sleep enough, we get tired. When we get tired, we need energy. When we need energy, we either need to sleep to get some energy, or how else do we get energy? What is food? Food is energy. Calories are energy, aren't they? But you may know that. But a lot of times when you're hungry, really your body thinks it's hungry, but really what it is tired. It's tired and it needs energy. You can get that energy through eating or through, going to bed. So, but let me tell you some of the papers that I found. One was this one right here. It's by Patterson et al., Intermittent Fasting and Human Metabolic Health, okay, 2015. What she writes is, there is little evidence to suggest that modified alternate day fasting produces superior weight loss or metabolic changes in comparison to standard energy restriction regimens. In other words, you're going to reduce your energy intake when you have intermittent fasting. Here they're talking about alternate day fasting, but there can also be the 16-8 where you fast for 16 hours, eat for 8 hours, and we have some papers that specifically talk about that. This one is an every other day thing. You're going to reduce your calorie intake just because you have a shorter window in which to eat, right? But reducing your calorie intake through that means, and reducing your calorie intake simply by grazing throughout the day, but having less food, gives the same thing. There's no evidence to suggest that one is better than the other. This is from the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. However, she did say, data from trials and prospective cohorts support the hypothesis that consuming the majority of the day's energy early in the day is associated with lower weight and improved health. Bingo, ding, ding, ding. That supports the idea of perhaps not eating after dinner, just like many of you have talked about. Okay. She says, in support of intermittent fasting, sort of support of it, several lines of evidence support the hypothesis that eating patterns that reduce or eliminate nighttime eating and prolong nighttime fasting intervals, and by that she puts in brackets, greater than or equal to 11 hours. She didn't say 16. She did not say 16. Greater than or equal to 11 hours could result in sustained improvements in human health. So nighttime fasting for maybe 11 or 12 hours could be good, not necessarily for 16 hours. Here's another study, Dr. Monique Tello, about intermittent fasting. In a study in which some people were on a 12-hour eating program, others were on an 8-hour eating program. Okay, so some ate between 7 and 7 p.m., others ate between 7 and 3 p.m. But both groups consumed the same amount of energy, that is the same amount of calories during their eating window. Some just had it for a prolonged period of time, but the same amount of calories. In this study, there was no difference in weight loss between the two groups, but we have evolved to be in sync with the day-night cycle, i.e. a circadian rhythm. Several of the people that I was reading talked about this circadian rhythm. Our metabolism, they go on to quote, our metabolism has adapted to daytime food and nighttime sleep. Nighttime eating is well associated with a higher risk of obesity as well as diabetes. So let's not get up in the middle of the night and eat. Okay, great. And maybe even let's not eat past dinner time, because we know that helps us to sleep. And what does sleep do? It increases our energy level. And what happens when we have more energy? We don't feel like eating. So we sleep better because we haven't eaten after dinner. We sleep better, then we don't feel like eating as much, so we have fewer calories, and boom, we lose weight. So it's kind of like intermittent fasting, but I just don't think it needs to be as extreme as what some of you might be suggesting. There was a study, but it was among mice. It was a mouse study, and it was by Gotthard et al. Okay? In this mouse study, and which I'm showing right now, they did show that intermittent fasting was more effective for weight loss than simply restricting caloric intake. So boom, that supports what some of you are saying. Leanne, it's not just reducing the calories, it's when you eat the calories. Okay, I'm not entirely in that camp yet just because of this study, because others have not shown that to be the case. Here's another one by Trepanowski et al. This one was published in JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, which is a very well-known and respected journal in academics. In this study, they had 3 arms. In one of the arms, and it lasted for 1 year, for 12 months. In one of the arms, you could eat whatever you wanted. In another arm, people ate 3 meals a day that were pre-planned that took up 75% of their calorie needs. So each person was different, depending on body weight. So if you needed 2,000 calories a day, for example, the 3 meals would give you 1,500 calories a day, 75%. So that was the second arm. The third arm was the intermittent fasting arm. On this arm, on alternate days you would fast and then feast. So on the fasting day, you only had 25% of your calorie needs that day. So you didn't not eat at all, but you only had 500 calories. Then on the feasting day, you had 125% of your calorie needs. So if you needed 2,000 calories, you'd have 2,500 on that day. So in other words, between the 2 days averaged out, you had the same calorie intake as the people who had 3 meals a day of 1,500 calories. Their conclusion was, both of the reduced calorie groups, and remember there was a third group where you ate whatever you want. But both of the reduced calorie groups lost and kept off the same amount of weight and had similar numbers for blood pressure, heart rate, cholesterols, insulin resistance, and fasting glucose. And this, I think, is the biggest paper I've found so far, and it was published in 2018. Finally, there's one more paper by Gabel et al., Nutrition and Healthy Aging. This one looks at the effects of 8-hour time-restricted feeding on body weight and metabolic disease risk factors in obese adults. Okay, so it's the type of intermittent fasting that seems to be the most popular these days. It's not an every other day thing like that last paper I just talked about, but instead it's you eat for 8 hours, you don't for 16. It doesn't mean you're eating constantly for 8 hours, but you know what I mean. You have an 8-hour window in which you can eat. In this study, they did find mild weight loss and reduced blood pressure among those that were on the intermittent fasting. but no difference was found in glucose levels or in insulin resistance. So insulin resistance stayed the same, glucose stayed the same, but there was mild weight loss. But guess what? This study, I almost feel like throwing it out the window, because guess who the controls were? Controls were people who were not dieting, they were not reducing energy or calorie intake at all. To me, the controls should have been people who were doing old-fashioned reduction of calorie intake. Old-fashioned meaning you can eat when you want to, but you reduce your calories. That would have been a good control. So it's hard for me to say whether intermittent fasting here, whether they're showing that it's better than doing nothing or what. I don't know. Now, some of you might write and say, guess what, Leanne? The neat thing about intermittent fasting is you don't count calories at all. You keep talking about calories and energy. Yes, I understand. Well, the program that I'm trying to go on as well for the rest of my life, also I'm not counting calories. This whole past year since I started this YouTube channel, have you ever once until today heard me talk about calories? I don't count calories. I always have in the past. Oh, and I'm sure many of you have. I have a lot of things memorized. I know an apple, an orange, a banana, they're all around 100 calories. An apple and an orange a little bit less than 100, a banana a little bit more, an egg is about 100 calories. Oh, I got so many things memorized. If I look at a little 6-ounce piece of meat, I can tell approximately how many calories is in that. I got things memorized, and I'm sure a lot of you do too. But I'm not counting calories anymore either without going on intermittent fasting. I'm simply trying to eat healthy, make right food choices. And look at size on a plate. When I look at a plate, I don't want to see a mound of food unless it's a mound of vegetables. Fine. If I'm hungry, pile on the vegetables, no big deal. But other than vegetables, I do not want to see any mounds of food on my plate, which is the kind of thing that I used to have. I'd have 2-3 pieces of chicken. No, 1 piece of chicken, just normal, trying to eat within reason, but without calorie counting. It's the same kind of idea as intermittent fasting. And thanks to you, I am going to be trying to cut back on my nighttime snacks. So that's big. So that's it. I think the conclusion that I've drawn is that I've learned something. What I've learned is I was saying intermittent fasting is unhealthy. Intermittent fasting is going to reduce your metabolism. The studies that I have found have not shown that it really does do that. It's not really unhealthy. So if you like it, go for it. The studies that I found in respected journals say it's not bad. It's not great either. There's no real evidence that it's better than any other kind of healthy living, just eating well. There's no evidence that it's better, but it's not bad. So what I'm going to do is compromise and say, okay, I'm going to stop trashing it. I'm going to stop saying, hey, you got to eat, you got to have your breakfast, if you want to eat in an 8-hour window or even do an every other day thing, that's okay. I don't think it's going to be for me, and this evidence that I have found is that it's no better than eating normally. But I have learned something, because I was planning to find all sorts of evidence about how bad it was, and I really didn't. But I did not find evidence that was supported by scientific research that it was good either. Eric Berg, I really liked his video a lot, and there's something about him that I trust. But he didn't talk about any studies. He didn't talk about any results of research, which is the kind of evidence that I'm used to accepting. That's it. Write in and tell me your thoughts. What do you think about intermittent fasting? Love you lots. Let's all keep on the bandwagon, and we'll see you next week. Bye.